Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Institute for Personal Development, where total consciousness is the new frontier. Kriya Yoga is the union of the individual with the divine. Join us as we explore the practices that initiate this process.
Well, good morning and welcome to the Voice of Yoga. Let's talk consciousness. I am your hostess, Winton, and with me is Kenny Toy, also known as Swami Jayananda, founder of Institute for Personal Development, located here in Hampton, New Hampshire. Good morning, Swami. Thank you for being here today. How are you?
I'm pretty warm today, but I'm doing well. How are you?
I am warm as well. It's a hot one out there today. Well, thank you, listeners, for tuning in today. And on the Voice of Yoga, we will be talking about independence and true freedom. Well, Swami, I looked up independence, and one of the meanings was freedom from control, influence, support, aid, etc. Then I looked up the word freedom in the dictionary, and there was quite a few meanings, such as the state of being free, exemption from external control, political or national independence, exemption from the presence of anything specified. And they gave an example, freedom from fear. Now, those are just to name a few of the ones that were listed. But then I was thinking, I would imagine that freedom and independence might mean different things to each person. What I found interesting was the last definition, where it stated exemption from the presence of anything specified, like freedom from fear. Now, I know in our yoga classes we talk a lot about fears and how to eliminate them from our bodies. Would you give our listeners clarification on what is a fear and how do we go about eliminating them so we can become truly free?
Yeah, freedom, self-reliance, independence, they're all very interesting words, but what do they really mean? Because one of the definitions, freedom, was the state of being free or whatever. It gets after a while, it becomes a semantic argument. And that's one of the things that I think we try and do with Kriya Yoga is we recognize that freedom is really a state of being. And it's from a Buddhist standpoint, freedom is freedom from desire. Okay, but we come in with a physical body. We come in with desire. We come in with a sense of self. And physics tells us that matter can't be created nor destroyed. So we all have a Venus, we all have a Mars, we all have a sense of self. And in order to actualize the true experience of freedom in the sense that they're talking about, we have to understand that reality is multidimensional, that things are happening on different levels, and that we have different choices of sources that we will use to produce the feeling that we're okay. Because trying to stop desiring would be like, the secret to life is, I think I read years ago in one book, this person went to this esteemed master, and the master said, lift one leg. So the guy lifted one leg, and he stood there on one leg, and then the master said, now lift the other leg. And the guy, put the one leg down and then lifted the other leg, but, the master said, well, you can only use half your will. So here again, we're coming to, something that is, from our perspective, physically impossible to do. You cannot lift yourself off of the earth from the earth. The forces pull us back. And the same is true with the concept of desire. We come in with desire, and you can't get rid of it. But one of the things that you will learn is that you can desire a different source of sustenance. And that's where the concept of religion came in. The whole thing of educating people in how to separate from one source of sustenance, which is, ironically, like we talk about, duality is fear and limitation. So the physics, like attracts like. You draw from fear and limitation, that's what you become. But if you can connect to this other source of sustenance, which was referred to as the void or the nothing, then, of course, now you have pointed your desire. You have not gotten rid of it. You do not lose your sense of self. But you now desire something different, something that's more reliable and more dependable. And this isn't really a new concept, because let's look at America. Because when America was founded, we were one nation under God. Now you're not even allowed to say the word, And then we were the land of the free and the home of the brave. But now we don't know what God is. And, money has actually become our false god. And we are the land of the addicted and the home of the terrorized. What's missing? And what happened? How did we lose this? And historically, did we ever really have it? Those are questions, I don't think I have answers for. But the thing that I have discovered is that if you desire this void or this nothing, something different happens to us. So the whole thing of resurrecting this concept of the physics of spirituality, that like attracts like. If you draw from fear and limitation, that's what you become. If you draw from this thing called God, truth and wholeness, this indivisible unified field, then you become a whole person. And the changes that manifest as a result of this internal connection will offer us solution to most of the common problems that we're experiencing today.
So I think what you're saying is we have to use those three little words again that we speak about, and that is put God first. So if somebody has a fear of the water or fear of the dark or whatever it might be, fear of flying, so if they can turn their attention to the void, the nothing, to spirit, are you saying this is a first step in trying to overcome these fears that they've come in with?
Well, to answer your question, yes. And, but again, trying to understand how it works, because when an individual changes their source of sustenance, when an individual initiates this progressive cycle, they don't become senselessly optimistic or stupid. There are times when it is very valuable to have a genuine fear of water. Like I know the few times that I've been to Hawaii, and those signs on the beaches, and they're telling you that, if in doubt, stay out. There's legitimate reason. Not all fear is bad. That's the beauty of what I found of the yoga practice is it doesn't anesthetize you of fear. But what it does is it gives you a better platform to evaluate, your sense of well-being. And that's where the concept of God, the concept of this secret source of sustenance, this concealed deity, is such a valuable anchor. But you have to understand what it is and how it works. Because, again, coming back to what we've been saying, if you think God is a person, it's an astral image. That's a dualistic source of sustenance. It won't give you the same return. But if you figure out that God isn't a person, but God is the force right now that is supporting your life, and you take a lot of the ambiguity out of it, because one of the things that's provable is needs. And if you recognize God as your number one need, the thing that is singly most important to sustain your life, and then, of course, you create this hierarchy of essential needs so that your number two essential need is breath, then at least you're pointed in the right direction. But now you're starting to use what you really do need to produce the feeling in your body that you're okay. That gives you a platform. Then, of course, now you can deal with real-life circumstances and situations. And for a lot of us, not everybody has a love of water. Not everybody loves heights. Not everybody loves the dark. But if you have an anchor, just like it says in the Bible, the 23rd Psalm, as I walk through the valley of darkness, I shall not want. The Lord is my shepherd, kind of a thing. That when you're accustomed to using what you really do need as a symbol to produce the feeling in your body that you're okay, now you've got an anchor. But there's a lot of freedom and independence that comes with this connection. Because again, coming back to what do these words mean, for a lot of us, we think freedom is our ability to get whatever we want, which comes back to, what is it that I desire? Now, if you want something, then of course you're going to be in this trap, this psychological sand trap, where, you get what you want and you become rapidly dissatisfied and you want more, or you don't get what you want and you live in chronic anxiety, thinking that if I could just get that, I would be happy. And it's all part of a dynamic that, our approach to Kriya Yoga offers a person liberation from that. That you actually connect to something different.
I like that word liberation, because I know, like you were just saying, freedom to some people means I just want to do whatever I want, when I want. I don't want to have any responsibilities. I don't want to be caught up in bureaucracies or anything like that, but we still have responsibilities as citizens of our town, of our state, of our country, whatever it might be, or our jobs. We do have responsibilities. So the person who wants to experience total freedom, what's the first thing that they should do to recognize if they are totally free?
Yeah, true freedom, and again, coming back to some of your definitions came, as freedom from control, but it's actually 180 degrees from that, because it begins with self-control and self-mastery. And then, of course, it becomes part of a dynamic where freedom from desire really manifests itself as our ability to desire nothing. And that's why we had religion. That's why yoga was a practice to do something. Because this concept of independence, there's a big difference between self-reliance and self-esteem. Because of the way that we're socialized today is we're always seeking external reinforcement. To the extent that we sit down in a chair. When you plop down in a chair, you get the benefit of external support. But it's not the same as if you had been accustomed to sitting on the floor, where you trained your bones to support you internally. So a big part of human development is training our minds to look for what we really do need, but then conditioning and programming our bodies, changing the reward circuits in our brains, changing these neurological pathways so that we literally desire nothing. But when we do that, everything changes. That there are clear distinctions between humans in the larvae state and humans in the adult state. And even the language, even the words, freedom, self-reliance, independence, have very different meaning to people. And it's all going to be determined by what energy field do I draw from. Because if I'm constantly seeking external reinforcement, then my concept of independence is really self-esteem. That I'm happy when the outside world is fitting my inner subjective state. If you have the benefit of this other source of sustenance, and you have the benefit of what we'll call self-reliance, then you change the exchange of energy that you have between yourself and the outside world. You're in a position of strength where you can shape your inner state to fit the demands of the world. It's a very different dynamic.
So it comes first, so it's just the opposite of what you just said. So the inner state comes first, and then the outside world will correlate to what's going on inside of you internally. Is that like you normally would say what surrounds you is within you? Is that what you mean?
Well, yeah. You when you are trying to make this shift, of am I drawing from the outside world? Am I drawing from particles? Am I drawing from waves? Or am I drawing from this, absolute, this indivisible, unified state? You look at, what surrounds you. You look at how you're internalizing circumstances and situations in the external world, because it will give you clues to let you know. Because that's why fear is such an important barometer in being able to evaluate spiritual development.
Okay, so we're going to hold our discussion for just a moment while we hear a word from our sponsor. We'll be with you listeners in just a moment. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat.
If you are looking for a Samadhi-based experience, IPD Kriya Yoga has the goods. A complete yoga program that includes the practices and the process. Starting with the separation from mother, including the labors and tasks of the hero and the return as a whole person. Practice makes perfect only when practice is whole. Kriya Yoga is a path of action, knowledge, and devotion. Samadhi, or total consciousness, is experienced by knowing and doing with devotion. Call or click now and get started. 603-929-0303 or www.ipdtransform.com. Namaste.
Well, welcome back. For those of you just joining us, you are listening to The Voice of Yoga, and we are talking consciousness. Swami, let's get back to our discussion about independence and freedom. And during that short break, I was reminding myself that I started reading that book again by Dan Brown, The Lost Symbol. And in that book, he talks about apotheosis. My question to you is apotheosis and freedom, do they mean the same thing?
In my opinion, yes. In fact, I love the fact that, the capital building in Washington, D.C. has that fresco, that painting, and it's called The Apotheosis of Washington. You know, that it would be refreshing to think that the founders of this nation were individuals that were in the adult state, you know, that had this sense of putting God first, this sense of a resource-based economy. And, you know, how that would work as far as us establishing a genuine sense of freedom. And again, freedom from unnecessary dependencies. You know, because when one has the benefit of a resource-based economy, it doesn't negate the importance of a monetary-based economy. It just makes it smaller. You know, humans in the adult state are not irresponsible or senselessly optimistic. You know, they're very creative and industrious, and the word was enthusiastic human beings. But I think, you know, this process of the human becoming divine is our pathway to true liberation or freedom or independence for that.
What programs do you have that can assist a person through this apotheosis process? What do you suggest?
Well, the spiritual advance that we have just started, you know, I mean, is a great way, I think, to get on board. You know, you can join in at any time. You know, eventually you're going to start to see that if this concept of independence, this concept of freedom is something that you want, you're really going to need everything that we teach. You know, because that's what Kriya Yoga is. It's a complete holistic health management system. It's a practice, but it is designed to initiate this process. The whole thing of becoming something different, becoming divine. And you're going to need a path of action, things that you can and you must do. You will need a path of knowledge. You have to understand, you know, how creation is taking place in accordance with the law of opposites. You have to understand yourself in the way that you are created, the interplay between a, you know, physical body, an animal nature, a mental body, a human nature, and a spirit body, a divine nature. And also understand the physics of spirituality. You know, because it isn't just an academic accomplishment. You need to employ the knowledge, but then you also have to be able to apply it because you have to change your physiology. So this week, we're the second week of the spiritual advance, and we're really focusing on the physical body. You know, and then as we go into it a little bit further, we will start to employ the path of knowledge and eventually the path of devotion. But with, you know, as we've been saying in all of these shows, without this connection to this other source of sustenance, without the concept of the absolute, you can't become a whole person.
Okay, so I don't live in Hampton. Say I live in Kentucky or whatever, and I want to take part in the spiritual advance. How would I go about doing that?
Well, that's what we have, the online programs, and we also have a lot of our programs are on video now. You know, that you could go to the website and you could get, you know, like Human Development in the 8 Essential Stages, that course, online in video. And you could start right away. You know, you can also, we have live online classes that you could join with, you know. So there are ways of you getting this information.
So a person would just go to our, you know, the website and click on online classes, and it does it from there direct them to Powwow?
Yeah, that's it's pretty simple there. And then there are packages on Powwow that you can get. And then there's the difference between the classes and the videos, but it's laid out pretty easy to follow, I think.
Well, before we end our program, do you have any further comments or something that you want to explain to our listeners about freedom and or independence?
Well, I think, the whole concept of freedom from control, is an interesting concept to understand that, because when you think about the dynamics of addictive compulsive behavior, where somebody is controlled by forces that are beyond their scope of power, it's very problematic. And one of the reasons why people that are stuck in that regressive cycle experience the guilt, the shame, the anger, the resentment, the blame, the emptiness, and the boredom that they cycle through is because there is this innate drive in all of us that we want to be whole and we want to be complete. And so once a person undertakes the responsibility and learns how to separate from this regressive cycle and initiate a progressive cycle, they will almost immediately find solution to a lot of these common problems. But what's really interesting about the whole thing is that true spirituality is not abstaining. It's not giving up. In fact, it is indulging. Only you're indulging in a source of sustenance that has a completely different return than the one that we were accustomed to initially.
Well, in closing, I would like to invite our listeners to visit our website, www.ipdtransform.com. You can follow us on Pinterest, Twitter, Facebook, etc. But keep those comments and questions and curiosities coming. We do enjoy hearing from you. And Swami will respond to you in a short time. But next week, we will be discussing human development and Kriya Yoga. So, Swami, I was wondering if you can give us a preview of human development and Kriya Yoga, our program next week.
I think next week what we'll probably go into is a little bit more of the physics of spirituality, the practices that are specifically designed to initiate this process. The concept of going from unconscious awareness to self-conscious awareness to superconscious awareness. That it's not just a, useless bit of abstract scholasticism, but it is a fact that humans have enormous potential. And, that Kriya Yoga, the way that we teach it, is a scientifically proven method in how to unlock this experience. And then, of course, once I think you have an understanding of how it works and you have good leadership, going from knowing to doing becomes relatively seamless. So I think next week we'll kind of talk a little bit about, this process and, how our programs are specifically designed to facilitate that. And we'll probably go into a little bit more of, spiritual advance and where that is taking us.
Great, thank you. And I also want to remind our listeners, too, that next year we will be ending that spiritual advance with a one-week retreat in Costa Rica, and it's going to be absolutely a wonderful time and a great way to end that spiritual advance. So I would like to thank our listeners for joining in today on The Voice of Yoga. I am Lisa Winton, and with me is Swami Jayananda. We'll be signing off when we hope you have a wonderful Kriya Yoga kind of day. Namaste.
Namaste.